My name is Jacob Ellis. I'm a fourth-year supply chain management major. So for this project, as one of the leadership team members, our job was to make sure that the teams had all the resources they needed and we were able to answer any questions that teams had while they were working on their projects. So for our teams, it could have been everything. It could have been technology resources, figuring out how to overcome the challenges that COVID presented. It could have been contacts, working with other people on campus who might have information that they wouldn't otherwise have. And a lot of it was sharing past experiences about how to manage a high-performance team. Sure. So this is a leadership course, right? So our goal was to take students who are already starting to be leaders here on campus and help them develop even more. Lots of the questions we had related to things like DISC leadership styles and how to manage struggling team members and how to make sure progress was flowing as it should be. So as someone who's been a part of these programs for quite a few years now, we have a lot of examples and a lot of experiences that we can help share with these students. One we get quite often is how and when should we be meeting to make sure we're staying on task. Another one was when a group member may not have been getting along or not understanding a part of the project, how do you work with that person as a leader to make sure that they understand what they need to do and actually get done what they need to do? I think if I had to say that, I think our internal leadership team definitely was the MVP. I think we had 4 or 5 different student leaders help oversee all the projects. One was embedded within each team, and then myself and one other student were working kind of at a high level to make sure all of that fit together. And every one of them really shined. They were always there to answer questions, they made great connections with their teams, and they were just overall top of the line. Certainly. I think one challenge when it comes to leadership is realizing that you don't have to have one specific personality in order to be a leader, and I think that's something that I always need to be reminded when I'm working with these teams. Some of the teams had members of them that were super assertive and very dominant. Others had members who were a little more steady, a little slower, a little quieter, but at the end of the day, each of them added a ton of value to the team. So being able to see that in action is always something that's a huge benefit. I think when it comes to leading teams, there's a big difference between leading members of the team and leading other leaders. I think when people understand what's being expected of the leader of the group, everyone has a better time understanding why and where each deliverable needs to come from and what it needs to be. So I think that is a really cool dynamic that you pick up when you're working and you're surrounded by other leaders here on campus. I think a big challenge of that concept of leaders managing other leaders is figuring out what your dynamic in the room is. It's really easy to kind of plop yourself in the middle of a team and take charge, but it's a lot harder to make sure that that team can function without you. So I think one of my biggest challenges was figuring out where in that room I metaphorically belonged, figuring out how I could be there to remove obstacles from the team without necessarily impeding the team when my presence wasn't there. Cool. So for our projects, we worked in kind of a hybrid structure. We had once a week meetings in class in person where half of our time would be spent actually going through some leadership activities and some lesson plans, and then the other half would be spent working as the individual teams. On top of that, just because of the scale of all the projects that the students worked on, lots of the teams chose to meet on Zoom outside of class or work through group chats and things like that to coordinate future deliverables. I think when COVID plays into this, a lot of the challenges were balancing safety and passion. Lots of the students really wanted to make sure their project was all that it could be, especially when they were helping out such good causes, but at the same time, they needed to make sure them and their team members were staying safe while they did so. We had lots of questions about where we think we should draw the line and what extra precautions we could take to prevent the spread of COVID-19 while they were working through these projects. I think a big part of leadership is self-reflection when you're done with a project. So when you ask the question if there's anything I wish I would have changed, I think my answer is always going to be yes. Specifically though, I don't think there's anything I would have changed here, but each of those little items goes forward to kind of be a learning outcome for the future. So next time we run one of these programs, I'm definitely going to have a couple more experiences under my belt and a couple of new ideas that I can bring for the other teams.